Hello lawn mowing people. What I'm going to talk about today is lawn mowing tips and how to get the perfect cut each and every time. Now, why is it important to do this for a lawn mowing business? Well, the success of your lawn mowing business depends on the kind of work that you're doing, and if you're doing a good job, then the customer sees it when he pulls up at the end of the day and he's happy. If you do a bad job, he comes home, he sees a bad cut, and you're not likely to keep that job for very long. So it's a good idea to do a good cut every time. And so how often should you be mowing lawns in order to make a lawn look the best? Well, that depends on the time of year. If it's winter, you're going to be doing it less. So if you're in New Zealand or Australia, you might be doing it about once every 4 weeks. I mean, we do have 2 weekly lawns, and we do have weekly lawns at this time of year, but most of them are 3 or 4 weekly. And then when it comes to spring, everybody needs to be 2 weekly in spring. Some lawns will be weekly. We don't carry any 3 or 4 weekly lawns over that time of year. It's just too busy. And it's so you basically mow as often as the season requires, and that's the best way to go about it. And don't go going away in the middle of spring or something like that, because if you take a week off in spring, your customers are going to notice. If you're going to go on holiday, go on holiday in the winters. That's the best time. So the best thing to do is when you turn up and you mow a lawn, use your weed eater first. And also when you use your weed eater, because your weed eater head spins clockwise. Well, most weed eater heads spin clockwise, and that's providing that you've got a straight shaft machine. If you've got a bent shaft machine, it might go the other way. But if your head's spinning clockwise, then what you want to do is you want to weed eat anti-clockwise. You want to weed eat in the opposite direction to the direction that your head's turning. Now, why do you do this? The answer is quite simple, because apart from being less dangerous, because what it's doing is it's throwing grass onto grass, and it's throwing it away from the house, not towards windows. It's a lot less likely to throw a stone and break a window if you're mowing anti-clockwise. And the other thing is that when you're going in that direction, you're throwing your grass off the concrete onto the grass, which means that your cleanup's a whole lot easier. You've got a lot less grass to blow off when you finish the job. Now, another thing that you should do is make sure that your blades are sharp. So what we do is once a month we pull our blades off our machine, give them a little bit of a sharpen with a grinder, and then put them back on again. And if they start looking a bit worn, I keep a new blade in the workshop. I compare it to a new blade. Once it starts getting a bit worn, I'll throw it away and I'll put a new blade on it and then just carry on. Normally with a new blade, I won't sharpen that for the first 2 or 3 months, because they're generally pretty sharp anyway. So another thing that you need to do is make sure that you set your mower for the correct height of the lawn. And when you do this, don't do this on the lawn. Do it on the path. So what you do is you look at your lawn, and there's basically only really a few different heights that you'll cut a lawn. You'll do a high cut, you'll do a medium cut, or you'll do a low cut. Preferably you're doing high or medium cuts, because I don't really like low cuts. They attract flatweeds and they end up giving you a horrible looking lawn, but some people ask for them, and at the end of the day you're giving a customer what they want. So what you do is you get your mower and you adjust your height before you start mowing the lawn, and get the right height, and then you start mowing the lawn. And just remember that basically you've got your three heights. And what we actually do is, when we have workers, we actually write the cut height for the machine on the actual job sheet. So they look at it and they pull up and they see something like H3.5. So they know that the height is it's cut at a 3.5, and if it's got a CR, that means the catching, removing the grass. If it's got an M, they know that it's a mulch. So that basically just tells them what height that they need to cut the lawn on. If you're doing it by yourself, you get a fairly good idea at what height you need to do a lawn on. Okay, so another thing is, do not get in the habit of actually starting your mower on the concrete, especially when you're working on wet days, because what can happen is that you start your mower and you get a huge green ring on the concrete, and it takes like a week to fade. And that's just not a good look, especially if you pull up in the driveway and you do it just on the edge of the drive and then start mowing the lawn, and then they're looking at that green ring when they arrive home from work for the next week. How do you think they're going to feel about that? So make sure that if you're working in the wet, push your lawn mower onto the grass, make sure the height's right, and then start your mower on the grass, because then nobody's going to see the green ring, and you'll end up with a much better job. Now, one of the things that a lot of people ask, and I mean it's a source of great debate if you go online and look at this, is which way should you mow a lawn? Now, there's lots of ways to mow a lawn, and what I tend to do is I tend to just mow in a diminishing circle. So I just mow around the lawn and just get smaller and smaller each time until I get that piece in the middle. Now that's just a simple way to do a lawn, and it's a no-brainer. But if you're doing a lawn that's a really, really nice lawn, then what you really want to be doing is changing directions. What I used to do is I used to keep track of what direction the lawn was last mowed in. But when you've got lots of guys out there working in vans, it's quite difficult for them to keep track of the last cut. So what I did is I came up with a simple system. So it's basically on the 1st to the 10th of the month, we go straight up and down. And then on the 11th to the 20th, we go across. And then on the, of any time we turn up and it's after the 20th, we just do a round in the circle. So that was basically what it does. Is it doesn't make sure that every single cut is different, but it gives it enough regularity so it doesn't actually end up getting what I call goat tracks in the lawn, which is the tracks where someone's been mowing the lawn the same way for years and years and years, and the grass has started growing in ruts in the direction that the way that the lawn's been cut. So you want to avoid that. If you're using a mulch mower, what I do is I go in the direction that the blade is spinning. And so what that does is if there's any little build up or anything like that, it ends up being, you're normally on the left hand side of the mower, and if you're catching the left hand side every time you do a circle, I just go around in or big squares or circles, if you're catching that little bit of rubbish that comes off the end, then you can get a perfect mulch every time, and it's pretty simple to do. Now another thing that you've got to watch out for is when you're emptying the catcher. Make sure that when you're emptying the catcher that you flip the catcher back to get all the grass inside the catcher. Don't let it fall back inside the mower and make a mess on the lawn. But also don't go sticking your hand in the back of the mower when the blade's going, of course. that's just not a good idea at all. So just make sure that you're working with a clean chute. If the chute is getting dirty, turn off your mower, clean it out a bit, and just make sure that when you empty the catcher, you flick it back so all the excess grass flies into the catcher. And the other thing, of course, is that you want to overlap your cuts just a little bit, because you don't want those mohawks in a lawn. They look absolutely horrible. I know that when you do a reclaim on a lawn, you can't help but get a few of them, but with a lawn that you're mowing every week, every 2 weeks, you shouldn't have anything like that at all. So you just overlap a little bit, just enough, so there's no, what my little boy used to call sticky up bits. So now another thing is when you mow a lawn for the first time, just be aware that there might be things like little tree trunks and stones and bits and pieces like that, and just keep your eye out. And if there's any rubbish or objects on the lawn, make sure you know where they are, that you don't go running over them with the mower, because that's going to cause damage. And the last thing you want to do is get a bent crank on your mower, because that's just can be fixed, but you're better off just having a look at the job first. Now another thing is that when you finish a job, do make sure that you go around with the blower, whether you think it needs it or not. As soon as I finish a job, I'll just go around, I'll do all the paths, I'll do all the driveways. One thing that I will not do is an entire drive if it's autumn and the leaves have come down. The object of going around with the blower is not to completely blow off everything off the paths and driveways. It's to blow off the rubbish that you've left. So what I What I will do with a job like that is I'll fade in the blow. So I'll just stand with the blower a bit higher and then start like that. So it blows the grass off, but it pretty much leaves the driveway as it was, because if you're going to include the driveway in the job and completely blow all the rubbish off the drive every time, then you need to be charging for that. So that's basically all I've got to say about how to mow a lawn. Perhaps one day I'll stick a video up but at the moment I'm doing these videos by myself, so I can't video myself doing a lawn and talk about it at the same time. It would be a little bit difficult. But anyway, hopefully this has given you a little bit of information and will help you keep that standard of work up and do a good quality job every time, and therefore keep more customers and build your business faster. So get out there, mow lawns, have fun, and happy lawn mowing, people.